So thank you, like for taking your time. So I'm not going to take a lot of your time. Like I said, the purpose of this is just basically to go over, your story mainly. We want to hear from you. What is it that, where did you come from? Where are you right now? Basically what happened in your life that basically made you change your career path and everything. And what did you learn from it? And just, like I went over the questions. I have actually everything here, so I'm going to be taking notes while we're talking.
Okay.
I want to, like I said, put everything together. And then also at the end, I'll also get all your links later. So once the video is up and running, we can put all the links on the bottom, and then people can reach out to you and contact you and share everything. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess give us a bit of background, like, who are you? And yeah.
Absolutely. So my name is Raven Solomon, and I am currently a keynote inspirational speaker, a leadership speaker, and what I call a corporate millennial coach. And so that entails pretty much helping millennials understand and be understood in the workplace. I did not start off in that career. I actually started with a Fortune 50 food company that we all know and love, which I'll choose to not mention. But I was with that organization for about 8 years. Started out there straight out of college, went into a managerial training program, and everything was awesome. I excelled in that managerial program and became a manager at a very young age, a district manager, and performance was there. The likability was there and all that jazz. And so I excelled very quickly. And I reached the executive level of that organization at the age of 28, which was
that's awesome.
I'm extremely proud of. But it also came with some stress factors as well. And it came with some pressure, not only to perform, but to carry minority communities on my back in a lot of ways, So not only was I a minority by being a female, but I was a minority by being a person of color, and also a minority in terms of my age, my age group being a millennial within that executive space. And so it was a lot to carry, and I didn't realize necessarily that I was carrying so many burdens for other communities until I really had the time to sit down and be faced with that reality. And so to kind of segue into my transition out of corporate America, I was in that executive level job I just mentioned. I'd moved probably 3 or 4 times with the company in 8 years, and had just gotten settled back to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where I'm from, born and raised in Charlotte. So my family is there, and that opportunity gave me a way to get back to Charlotte, which I was ecstatic about. It was also the job that I wanted. And so I was happy to go, and thought that I'd be there for quite some time before I moved on to my next opportunity, wherever that might lead me. And I was in the job for about a year or so, and I recall leaving work one day, and I was super tired. I had worked maybe 10 days straight at that point, and I was about to have a 4-day weekend, so I was okay with working that 10 days straight. And I remember driving home. It was late at night. It must have been about 7:30 or 8 or so, and at the time the sun was going down very early, so it was dark. I do remember that. And I drove home, and I reached my home, and my friend was staying with me at the time, and oddly enough, she was supposed to be leaving that night, but it was calling for snow, so she decided to stay. And thank God she decided to stay, because as soon as I came through the garage door, I had a seizure for the first time ever, right there in my hallway, and it scared her half to death, of course. And she called the ambulance, and the paramedics came, took me to the hospital, and I remember waking up in an ambulance. The last thing I remember prior to that was walking through the garage door. So I had no idea what happened. I don't recall anything at all. And it was a scary time for a lot of us. And so the doctor thought it was an isolated incident and said, hey, just go home, get some rest, and you're free to return to work at your discretion. So, okay, that's good. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
So I went home. I did get some rest. I rested for about 4 days or so, and I decided to go back to work. But I vowed that I would adjust my work habits, and I would pull back a little bit and not work as much as I was. And so that's what I did, or at least I tried to.
Yeah.
And, the next time I had a similar encounter was about a month later, and I had left work again, and I decided this time to go to the gym for, a brief workout. I hadn't been able to work out since the last seizure because for many reasons. I was just trying to take it slow a little bit.
Yeah,
but
you want to relax your body,
absolutely,
yeah.
Just kind of get the rest. But I was guilting myself because I was like, I have to work out. I feel like I'm 8 pounds back and all this other stuff. So I decided to leave work. I left my computer there. So I did stay a little late. I stayed till about 6:30 or so, left my computer and decided I was just going to go to the gym for a quick workout. And I did that workout. And then I remember pulling out of the parking lot of the gym, and that is all I remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the next thing I know, I was waking up in an ambulance.
Oh, wow.
And the paramedic was asking me all of these different questions that I could not articulate. I couldn't put sentences together. About 5 minutes after that. And I asked him what happened, and he explained to me that I had a seizure while I was driving, and that I'd ran right through a red light and hit a car and bounced off the car and hit a tree. And luckily the tree wasn't huge, but it was big enough to stop my car from driving into a bank, a financial center.
Thank God. Thank God for the tree, right?
Thank God for that tree. One day I'll write a book called The Little Old Tree.
I know, right?
And I will tell this story, but thank God for that tree, because that tree stopped me from driving into that bank, which only God knows what would have happened at that point. And the paramedic described to me that when they got to the scene, my foot was actually still on the gas, revving the engine, and I was completely unconscious. And so while my foot was revving the gas, the tree, this little old tree, is stopping my car from going into that bank. So I thank God for the tree.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was faced with reality, right? I was faced with the reality of there's something going on in your body. Your health is not what you think it is, or it's not the same anymore. So we went down this treacherous path of trying to find medication that would control the seizures, and also try to identify where the seizures are coming from. And that's a process in and of itself. So I was faced with that reality that my body is no longer the same. And I was also faced with the reality that I could have died in that car accident. It could have been very, very serious. And oddly enough, I took significant time off of work, but oddly enough, while I was out during that time, I'd heard of an accident that occurred in Charlotte with a young lady who'd had a seizure while she was driving. And unfortunately, she had an accident and killed herself, and everyone in the car. And so that obviously shook me to the core, because that could have been me. That absolutely could have been my life and my story, had it not been for God and the angels that have kept me safe all of this time. And so I was faced with those two realities and knew that I had to make some sort of change, whether it was changing my professional career or it was changing the way that I approached my life completely. I knew I had to make one of the two choices, and I decided that I needed to change my life completely. And my dieting was already okay, so I didn't make much change there. It was really my emotional self-care, my mental approach to life and challenges. I've always just steamed through everything that's come my way, every encounter of obstacles that I've met. I've just kind of plowed through it and not necessarily taken the time to emotionally process and really take the time to sit down. So I always joke and say, God used epilepsy to literally sit me down, because I had no other choice but to sit down at that point. And I just took 8 months or so of just solace, just peace, a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, a lot of just enjoying my time, which I had not done much of before, enjoying the people in my life. And from that 8-month sabbatical, if you will, I came to the decision that I would not return to that company that I was working for, and that I would actually go out on my own. And I'd use this story that I so often tell friends and family and people I encounter to actually inspire other people to overcome their obstacles and thrive. And so when you asked me about this podcast, I saw it as just an absolute alignment of what I look to do through my work is really inspire people to overcome medical challenges, any type of challenge in their life, and not only overcome it, but to thrive in the face of it. And so with epilepsy being a part of my life now, it's an obstacle. At this point, I've overcome it, but I'm still in the process of thriving in the face of it. And I will absolutely do that because that's what I do.
Yeah. No, you sound like somebody that's like a go-getter, that you go and you go and you just, get the things done, So, yeah. So, I mean, sometimes it's the same. Like, I relate a lot because I'm the same way. It's like, unless something stops me, like, it's like, just going, and and sometimes you just need like something kind of like, whoop, stop, So, it's great. And like, so basically as far as, I guess you went over kind of like how it's changed your life and everything. I'm going to go a little bit more deeper into like what you're doing now, but I wanted to know basically, so as far as like your, the process and like the doctors and everything, like have you, like you said, you haven't, your lifestyle was already pretty good. So like, have you changed anything like a lot, or have you basically, have the doctors say, well, maybe try, there's all these different diets or different medicines or whatnot, or like, have you tried different things, or have you decided, what, I'm just going to do like natural or no medicine, or, maybe acupuncture, or I don't know. I mean, there's just different ways. So I guess, maybe just see like, I guess just explain a little bit of, I guess, what you're trying or what you're doing and what's working. Because I know you've been basically, you have mentioned before that you were basically free of any seizures and stuff like that for a while, which is great, because a lot of people, they suffer from it, like the daily or weekly and stuff like that. So if basically you're not having it, for, I believe you said like a year or something, right? So that's, that's awesome. That's great, because your body, I guess, really took to whatever it is that you changed, you're doing the right thing, right?
Absolutely. I would like to think so. I would like to think so. It was, as I mentioned prior, it was a process. Those 8 months that I took off was not only to heal my mind and my body and so forth, but it was also a time to really find a medication that would not make me ill all of the time. And so we went through 8 different seizure medications in order to find one that work for my body. So over those 8 months, we were literally trying all different types of drugs in my body, and my body was just responding in so many different ways, from nausea to constant headaches to weight gain, no seizures, thank God, but just a bunch of different side effects, sleeping, fatigue constantly, which kind of debilitated me in a way where I could not function, at least to the capacity that I was used to, but also just from a normal operational standpoint. I wasn't able to really function the way that I needed to perform on my job, which is the reason why I took that sabbatical as well. But so the physicality of the process was something that I would not wish on anybody. It was the physical process, but also the emotional strain and tax that it takes to go up and down on drugs all the time. I mean, 1 minute you're high, 1 minute you're low, 1 minute you're happy, the next minute you're, depressed. And obviously this is a depressing situation to begin with, having this awesome career and this awesome life, quote unquote, full of success, and just literally being put on your behind and having to readjust the entire way you view life. And so the physical part was a challenge, of course, but I had already had a pescatarian diet, vegetarian pescatarian diet. So I haven't made any adjustments to that just yet. at one point I do want to be vegan, and I hope that that'll continue to help my overall health.
So what is I'm sorry if I interrupt you, but what is a pescatarian? I mean, just like for, let's say, the listeners that they don't know, because I know everybody talks about vegan or I guess, well, there's vegan and what else? I guess vegan, right?
So vegetarian.
Vegetarian, vegan.
A pescatarian is like a vegetarian who eats fish.
Okay.
Yes. So I do eat seafood. And I had that diet for about maybe 5 or 6 years. I have today. So by the time I had my first seizure, it must have been about 4 or 5 years that I had already been a pescatarian and had completely cut out meat from my diet. And so I didn't make any dietary changes yet.
Okay. How about like dairy? Do you drink dairy and all that stuff? Because I guess
well, I never was a milk drinker, but I do eat eggs. I do eat eggs and I like cheese. So those are my downfalls in terms of the vegan lifestyle. But one day I will make that adjustment, and I look forward to that day.
Yeah.
But in terms of my diet, there are no changes from a physical, workout standpoint. I do work out. I try to work out at least 4 days a week. And I was doing that prior to epilepsy as well. But I really had to, I mentioned the depression and also the side effect of weight gain on a lot of the medications. So I gained all this weight during that 8-month sabbatical. I was trying to still work out, but that really wasn't, it was just kind of washing each other out in some ways. I was maintaining the weight I'd gained, if that makes sense. And so the workout regimen that I have today has helped me lose at least 10 to 15 epilepsy pounds, I call them. They are a result of epilepsy, and I'm able to fit back into some of the clothes that I was once in prior to being diagnosed with epilepsy. So I think the approach that I've taken to maintaining my physical body has certainly helped, but the major change in my life that has aided, I think, in epilepsy not being a factor at this point is my refusal to entertain stress as much as I used to.
I love that. I'm going to write that down. Refusal to entertain stress. I need to do that too.
It's hard. It certainly is hard to do because there's so many stress factors that we all face from day to day. And I'm currently unwed and don't have a family. And so I can only imagine having children at a young age, having a husband to care for, and a nonstop, fast-paced career. I can only imagine the stress factors that most women face. And so I
think once you have kids, it's kind of like you just, it's like I think the stress just doesn't even touch you anymore because
I can totally understand. So I can only imagine, the stressors that a lot of your audience is facing today. And so one thing that I decided when I left corporate America is that I will never work as hard as I did like that again. I'll never do it because what I am still is a recovering perfectionist. So is what I like to call it. I'm trying to get out of my perfectionistic ways, and that is being a perfectionist, I think, heightens your stress level by 50%. Things that the normal person wouldn't stress about as a perfectionist, you find very stressful. And your life will then be pretty intense, and you overexert yourself constantly trying to live up to the standard that's in your head. And I think that I did for quite some time. I did mention to you that when I was in college, I went to North Carolina State University in Raleigh. And huge school, about 30,000 students probably now. And I graduated as valedictorian of my graduate class of over 8,000 students. And so I always tell people if there's anything that speaks to my perfectionism, it's that.
No, that's awesome. I mean, like you can tell you're a very driven, motivated person. And so it's like, yes. And sometimes I think it's also, we put that expectation on us because, you were a valedictorian, then you were, like a manager at such an early age, especially like you said, as a woman, at such a VP position, all the stress builds up in ourselves. And like you said, and then something sometimes has to change, happen to change because otherwise you'll be still there and you wouldn't even know. And then 20 years later, everybody's stressed out and,
Exactly.
so let me ask you this. So I guess, I mean, you kind of went into it, but like, I guess, so what's your victory? I guess, what is your victory? Like, what do you see your victory? Where are you now? Like, what is it that you're doing? What, like, what have you changed? And yeah.
Absolutely. I see my victory as being an entrepreneur and
Mm-hmm.
being a speaker and a coach, being exactly where I am today professionally. So being in the space that I am professionally is absolutely my victory. I've been through so many, to being diagnosed with epilepsy, so many different things, so many different obstacles that I've been able to endure and persevere through. But at the end of the day, none of them have placed me. They add to where I am.
Mm-hmm.
But epilepsy is the one that literally moved me to where I am. And so I'm grateful for it. At this point, I can say that. When I was going through that 8-month time frame, I was not grateful for epilepsy. I hated it. And I still kind of do a little bit. But at this point, I can say if it weren't for that, then I wouldn't have the victory that I have in the career that I have. And I would also say my victory is being able to control my life, control my schedule. My prior organization, my life was reactive to the organization's wants, desires, needs, and etc. I bent over backwards in every way possible to be what they needed. And there was advantages to me too, right? I was paid for that. I received promotions, there were reasons why I did it. It wasn't because they were forcing me to do that. But much of my life was reactionary. When a customer would call at 3 a.m., I would have to pick up the phone. When I had, employees that would call out at 2 a.m., I would have to, what I mean? So my life would constantly be bending to an organization's needs and wants. And it was a very taxing organization at the same time, and an industry.
Yeah.
Now, being an entrepreneur, I can control my schedule, and there's no better feeling coming out of such a reactionary environment. At this point in my life, I can proactively create whatever I want and whatever my heart's desire is. And yes, being an entrepreneur is very taxing in and of itself, and there are challenges, and you're going to work hard, and I may even work just as hard as I did when I was with my prior company. But at the end of the day, it's more of a proactive work than it is a reactive work, and that in and of itself takes a lot of the stress off. So my victory by far is doing the work I'm able to do now, inspiring people, teaching people how to lead and be successful in their careers, and helping people overcome obstacles and thrive in their lives and in their leadership.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's great. Do you feel like, because you said you're like a millennial coach, right? Do you feel like millennials, or I guess young people in general, they need guidance, or they need coaching, or how do you see, I mean, you being a millennial too, right? So
I am a millennial, yes. And with that, I can see our blind spots. Me being able to become a director and executive at that organization at such a young age spoke to my ability to kind of play between both sides of the table, if you will, as it relates to generational differences. So I am able to be a millennial, understand a millennial, of course, but I'm also able to effectively communicate with other generations and understand why they think the way that they think, and why they value specific things that they value. And ultimately, I always tell folks, millennials really want nothing different than other generations have wanted. The prioritization is just different. And so it's small things like that we just have to understand about one another. And the only way to do that is through education and communication. And so I do think, millennials are misunderstood a lot, and I'm here to help other generations understand millennials, and also help them tap into the talent that's within the millennial population. There's tons and tons and tons of talent that can be leveraged by organizations within this generation. We just simply have to figure out how to understand them in order to thus leverage that talent. And so, yes, millennials absolutely need to be understood, but they also need to understand. And that is where I think my expertise comes in being able to play the middle of the table, is that there are certain things that millennials feel should bend towards them. And I'm here to kind of help them understand that's not going to happen, that you have to figure out how you fit into a culture in order to then change it. Yeah. And so there are certain things that we can expect as millennials. We can expect an organization to bend towards us on. There are other things that are not going to bend, and that we have to penetrate the system in order to then be able to have the influence to then bend it. And so, yes, millennials need to do some understanding. We need to do some listening. We need to do some observing. We need to do some reading. All of those things to better understand the people that we work alongside and will possibly lead. One of the things that I think helped me a lot in understanding multiple generations is just the way I grew up, where I was raised. My father, unfortunately, was addicted to drugs the majority of my life. And so my grandmother really filled that gap for us, my siblings and I. So my mother and my grandmother raised us. So that they are of completely different generations. Yeah. And so getting that kind of stern hand from my grandmother really helped me and really taught me how to lead as a more experienced person, if that makes sense. And so she led from more of a baby boomer traditionalist standpoint.
Yeah, like a wooden spoon.
Yeah,
exactly. Like my grandmother.
Exactly. Yes.
Like a broom.
Yes. So you pick up some of that, and then you also pick up some of that Gen Xer leadership, baby boomer leadership, and then you also pick up your own, creative leadership. And so I think that has really helped me understand multiple generations as being raised by several different generations.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, I'm going to put all the links, and at the end, so you'll give me all the links, but like, if people want to basically reach out to you and get more information, I guess, about your programs, and also about how they can get help, or how can they get guidance, or even have you come out to speak or whatnot, what is the best way to contact you? And, what's the best way to contact you, and where can they find you?
Yes, so you can go to my website at ravensolomon.com. That's SOLOMON. And there on the left side of the page are all of my social media links. I'm most active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. But I'm on pretty much every social media outlet imaginable. I also have a YouTube channel that you can check out. And on that YouTube channel, I post a video weekly. And it varies. We have 3-week cycles. We have 1-week cycles of each vein of work that I do. And so let's say this week I may put out an inspirational video. The next week I'll put out a leadership video. The next I'll put out a millennial coaching video, and then we'll cycle through those 3. So my YouTube channel is Raven Solomon TV. You can definitely check me out there. And through email, you can absolutely reach out to me via email. The contact section on my website goes directly to me. And I love hearing from folks and first hearing about possible opportunities. So
awesome. So so we'll definitely, like I said, we'll add all those stuff in the bottom, so it's easier for people to click on or whatnot. And like I said, I'm definitely, hopefully we get your word out, and get your out and your story out. So so let me ask you this. So like, I know you do a lot of speaking. You're a very sought out speaker, if that's the right English, sought out speaker. I don't know. But so basically, people seek you to come out and speak and talk and coach them. So I'm sure, you hear a lot of stuff. Like, what is maybe something that nobody asks, or something that you wish people, like interviewers, would ask that nobody actually really asks you, or something that you would like to talk about, but you never got a chance to?
That's a great question. Something I think or wish people would ask that don't is, what are the downsides to entrepreneurship or being a speaker or making the change that you made from corporate America to entrepreneurship? What does the ugly side look like? Is there an ugly side? Yeah. Because the glamorous side can look fabulous, especially in the day of social media. We can make pretty much anything look pretty. So what is the ugly side? And so that's one thing I wish people would ask, so that I can also provide the realistic struggles of making a change from corporate America to entrepreneurship. What did the financial preparation look like for such a change? Did you do it just haphazardly without planning? What did your support team look like in making that decision? What were the steps you took, to actually make that decision? What did it involve? So things like that, that hard part of it, the ugly side of entrepreneurship and transition.
Yeah, because it's like you said, with social media, it's just everything looks beautiful, right? Because you take a picture and it looks perfect, but nobody's there with you on the day-to-day when you're actually calling customers or calling corporations or whoever, to see if you can work with them, or the grind, the daily grind. Nobody sees that. Everybody sees the after effect, right? The polished beautiful. But nobody sees the sweating and they're like, oh my God, a customer just canceled and what am I going to do now? And, all this stuff.
All of that. Yes. All of that.
So yeah, no, I understand, because people think I think there's a perception out there that basically oh, you know what? I'm going to be an entrepreneur, And so basically you just become an entrepreneur overnight. You go out and basically millions of dollars are going to come, dropping from the sky. And, it doesn't happen like that. There's a work process, and then basically, the money always follows, always. It has to. Mm-hmm. But basically, that gap in between, like you said, nobody sees that.
Yeah, it's no joke. It's no joke. It is very real, There's a preparation process that I think is necessary before you make a leap of any sort, but particularly from leaving corporate America to transitioning into entrepreneurship. I think that there has to be some questions asked. The right support system to help you move into that space is important. Having a nice, a good team. There's so many things.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, leave it for have them. You don't want to give all your nuggets away. So like I said, I guess the last thing is I just wanted to thank you really for coming out on the show, and I guess just sharing your story as far as, overcoming epilepsies, because the whole, as I mentioned, the reason why I wanted to start this blog is because of my, basically because of having, like I said, the colon tumor, and basically going through this whirlwind of 1 week you're healthy and then the next week you're like, what happened, And so basically, just reaching out and just, getting people's stories out, what they've overcome, and showing people that, hey, even though, let's say, you struggle with epilepsy or whatever it is, you are able to become somebody successful. It does not define you. It does not mean that, you can't do anything. You see in yourself, you're a shining example of, somebody that's successful, that, we don't know what's going on, but, pray to God, we hope for the best, and thank God everything's been going well, and we just have to do with what we have as good as we can, and you're a great example of that, of showing what can you become,
Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to as you say that, if there's any parting words I could leave your viewers,
sure, yeah,
it would just be, a lot of the times our perspective can dictate what comes of obstacles in our lives, or what comes of anything in our lives. And so you can choose to view your obstacle or your illness as a barrier or an obstruction to your progress, or you can choose to view it as an additive or a contributing factor to your progress. And so I have a video on my YouTube page where I talk about obstacles that I've faced in my life, and I put them on bricks, and I place the bricks down in front of me, as the visual depiction of what I'm trying to articulate. And that, you know, each of those bricks are placed in front of me by my feet, and they could absolutely either trip me up as I continue to walk, and they could stop me from moving altogether, or they could actually serve as stepping stones to me getting to what's on the other side. And they could also serve as a platform for me to reach people that are experiencing those same obstacles. And so I thank you for providing me that platform to use that brick of epilepsy, that obstacle of epilepsy that has been placed in front of me, to actually reach other people who are experiencing like illnesses. So thank you.
No, thank you. So I appreciate it.